Competition and the act of competing with and against members of your own community is a foundational tenet of gaming culture, and especially multiplayer gaming. Competition has been a fundamental aspect of gaming since its inception. The original video game centres, arcades, incentivised competition through high scores and record keeping that would encourage other players to attempt to beat or break those records in order to put their name at the top. Today, the same attitude and competitive meta community between players still exists in one of the most famous competitive multiplayer games of all time. That game is Garfield Kart. The racing kart simulator is somewhat reminiscent of another well-known racing kart game. However, Garfield Kart established itself as different through the execution and inclusion of various creative differences that help identify the game as a standalone experience. The game includes fan-favourite characters such as Garfield, Odie, John, Normal, Arlene, Liz, Harry and Squeak, where each character and kart provides special competitive advantages over one another. This transformational aspect of gameplay keeps players engaged with their own personal styles and driving preferences, which gives every competitor a feeling of individuality in their performance. The gameplay loop consists of a series of items and power-ups that can completely change how a player plays the game. All these items are fittingly food-themed, including pies, rocket-fixing lasagnas, and freeze bombs. These in-game mechanics are intended to allow players to remain competitive in a race where they typically would not have been able to do so. While these game mechanics serve an intrinsic function of the game, they also provide additional emotional effects. These emotional effects relate to how players interact and treat one another in competition. The acts of trash talking, gloating and teasing are made much more real when one player is directly responsible for the other's demise. Unfortunately, the in-game characters do little to contribute to this competitive atmosphere. There are rarely any spoken lines in the game without any of the classic Garfield humour that has defined the lazy orange cat. There are very few attempts made at word building or exploring these fixed characters. Instead, the game relies on the predetermined knowledge or lore of Garfield to attract and immerse players. Garfield Kart has a lot in common with the classic Mario Kart series. While there are some differences between the two games, there are also many similarities, including their racing gameplay, use of item boxes, and structured competitions. To begin with, both Garfield Kart and Mario Kart are racing games where players control characters driving karts in a race to the finish line. Players must navigate through a variety of obstacles and hazards while trying to outdo their opponents. Furthermore, both games rely on positionally randomised item boxes to maintain a competitive edge. In Garfield Kart, players can collect item boxes containing various items that can help them gain a competitive advantage over their opponents, such as a speed boost, a shield, or a weapon like a pie or lasagna. Similarly, in Mario Kart, players can collect item boxes containing items like banana peels, shells, and mushrooms, which can give them an advantage over their opponents. The use of item boxes is a key element of both games, adding an element of randomness and unpredictability to the gameplay. Players must use strategy to collect and use items at the right time to gain an advantage over their opponents. This aspect helps to balance the game by giving weaker players a chance to catch up to the stronger players. And finally, the competition aspect of Garfield Kart includes playful teasing and trash talk amongst players. This can add excitement and motivation to the race. The multiplayer component adds an extra layer of excitement and competition to the game, making it more engaging and enjoyable for players.
I don't know what happened! Get out of here, wait, that's slowed me down! There's a beat a 10-car pileup in Garfield Kart.
Both games feature various team maps and competitions that are. In Garfield Kart, players can race on a variety of maps inspired by the Garfield comic and movies, such as the Garfield House, the City, and the Desert. Similarly, in Mario Kart, players can race on maps inspired by popular Mario games, such as Rainbow Road and Bowser's Castle. Additionally, both games featured structured competitions in the form of a Grand Prix tournament, which consists of 4 races and 4 cups. The cups are divided into 50cc, 100cc, and 150cc categories, each with increasing difficulty levels. The use of teamed maps and competitions is a feature that is common to both games. The maps in both games are designed to be visually appealing and immersive, while also challenging players' driving skills. The Grand Prix tournaments provide a structured and progressive way for players to test their skills against increasingly challenging opponents. This format also helps to keep players engaged and motivated as they progress through the game. While Garfield Kart shares many similarities with Mario Kart, there are some notable differences that set it apart from its more well-known counterpart. Firstly, the Garfield Kart franchise has not received as much attention or critical acclaim as Mario Kart, which has become a staple in the gaming industry. Garfield Kart is often seen as a satire game, created to cash in on the popularity of both the Garfield franchise and the kart racing game genre. As a result, it is not taken as seriously by many gamers or gaming critics. While this may not affect the gameplay itself, it can certainly impact the game's reputation and notoriety. Another difference between Garfield Kart and Mario Kart is the lack of dynamism in gameplay elements. Garfield Kart features a variety of tracks and characters, but they do not always feel as fleshed out or creative as those found in Mario Kart. The game's power-ups and items can also feel less intuitive or exciting, which can make races feel repetitive or dull. Furthermore, the characterization of the Garfield kart characters is often seen as bland and lacking in personality, while Mario Kart has a vast cast of characters with unique quirks and personalities. The characters in Garfield kart can feel flat and one-dimensional. This can make it difficult for players to connect with the characters or feel invested in their racing careers. Overall, while Garfield kart shares many similarities with Mario Kart, there are some key differences that may impact the game's reception amongst gamers and critics.
And it won't be long before everyone gets really frustrated and stops playing altogether.
Its positioning in gaming culture as a satire game, its lack of dynamism in gameplay elements, and its less engaging characterization are all potential differences that may set it apart from its more popular counterpart.